All right, so let's wrap up Sydney and hit our next philosopher. Um, there's a couple of sentences left, Sydney's examples in here. What child is there coming along? What child is that there coming along to play and sing? Thebes has written great letters upon an old door. This is examples. I don't care about this. That if a man can arrive at that child's age to not know that a poet's persons and doings are but pictures of what should be, and not stories that have been, they will never give the lie to things not affirmatively but allegorically and figuratively written. And therefore, as in history looking for the truth, they may go away full fraught with falsehood. So in poesy, looking but for fiction, they shall use narration but as an imaginative ground, a plot of profitable invention. He says you can read the historian and be misled, but with poetry, you know that it is just sort of an inspiring thing, and it's not that serious. It's something playful, and you're not supposed to use it to discover the truth. You're supposed to use it to invent something new. And also, he thinks you can sort of learn lessons from it. You can learn lessons from things that are not true. Cool. Okay, so we've had two philosophers so far here, Plato and Sydney, and I'm going to do this over and over and over again this semester, and it's going to make you crazy. But I'm going to start doing it now, and I'm going to do it like every week or so. So get used to it. These philosophers are difficult. The language is complex. We're going over a lot of ground. It is easy to get lost. So I like to have a kind of running map going so that we can always remember where we've been. So what I like to do is just keep repeating this over and over and over again, but to go through each philosopher and summarize them in one sentence. So we've only had two philosophers. This isn't very difficult. But number one, Plato. Art tells lies about reality, and this is bad because it distracts us from what really matters. Sydney says, art doesn't tell lies. Art is fiction. That's like a totally separate thing. Art is supposed to inspire, not teach you the truth. That's it. Those are our first two philosophers that we've looked at this semester, and we're doing pretty good. So, and again, you don't have to write about either one of these guys. You don't want to write an essay about Plato. You don't want to write an essay about Sydney. No one is going to make you. Although I would like you to go on the discussion board and make some comment, ask questions about Plato or Sydney, or make some comments or ask some questions and try them out. Try quoting them and putting them in your own words and give me an example to explain what the hell they're talking about and connect it to something you care about. Let's talk about Hamlet really briefly. I'm going to be doing more Hamlet stuff as we go, but just to talk about Hamlet really briefly, it's worth pointing out that Hamlet, people learn things from Hamlet. There's lessons to be learned in Hamlet, even though it's fake. And Hamlet, by the way, is a tricky one because Hamlet is actually based off of a history book. Hamlet apparently was a real person who lived in like the year 1000. So Shakespeare is 400 years ago, and Hamlet is 600 years before that. But he was a person who lived in Denmark, but we don't know a lot about him. And there's a history book, kind of, but I mean, history that old is like basically mythology. So there's a history book about him, and he was like a prince, and the basic outlines of the plot are similar. When Shakespeare took the history book and turned it into a play, he radically changed it. The whole idea of turning Hamlet into like a weird philosopher intellectual is like a huge jump. That's not in the original at all. And Plato would be like, that's not accurate. That's not what Hamlet was really like. But, it doesn't matter. Like, Shakespeare was doing exactly what Sidney said, right? This is it right here. They shall use the narration but as an imaginative ground, a plot of profitable invention. So Shakespeare looked at this old history book, which was basically mythology anyway, because it's so old, who knows if it's true, and he turned it into a play. He turned it to a profitable invention, meaning he came up with a fictional play where it didn't match the history exactly. He just wanted to make it more exciting and more interesting, and so he took what history there was and he made something fictional about it. And of course, there's a ghost in it. I mean, ghosts aren't real, guys. Probably, I don't know. Probably they're not real. But the point is it's obviously fictional, and no one's going to mistake it. But that doesn't mean you can't learn things from it. Just like Aesop's fables, where there's this race between a turtle and a rabbit did not ever happen. But you could still learn the lesson not to be cocky and overconfident, and you think you can just zip ahead at the last minute and do it. But slow and steady wins the race. Is the basic lesson from the tortoise and the hare, or whatever. So these things are valuable, even if they're not true. And really, the art's just supposed to inspire. It can inspire other art, but it gives you role models to be a better human being. And philosophers want you to be a better human being, but they don't make it look cool, and so no one listens to them. But the a poet or someone who makes a fictional story might have a character that is a really good person who is also very cool, and then it might make you want to be like that person. And since one of Plato's big things is to be an ethical human being, so Sydney's saying, hey, maybe you should care about art since it can help people be better human beings by providing good role models. Maybe Captain America is a good role model. Maybe, I don't know. It's tricky. Those guys are complicated. But they're characters. I'm sure everybody out there, I'm sure you guys all have fictional characters that you look up to, that you admire, and you try to be like them. Um, I quite like Professor Xavier. I also kind of like Dumbledore, even though he's a little bit of a psychopath. Professor Xavier is a little bit of a psychopath too. But there are people that you look up to. And Sydney's whole point is that that's what art is for, because it will make you be a better person. History is just what happened. Um, and the philosophy is supposed to teach to be a better person, but who can read it? It's not fun. It's not entertaining. Whereas poetry is both entertaining and instructive. And so it can make you into a better person. And that is his argument. So I think we have now officially finished our first two philosophers. I realize I'm not doing a ton with Hamlet. Later on, I'm going to stop and do whole massive Hamlet things. But that's not today. So we will get to crazy Hamlet stuff later. Although, oh wait, maybe I should do something with Hamlet. I just thought of something I should do with Hamlet before we move on from Sydney. Okay, you know what? I'm going to stop this video early and I'm going to go get some Hamlet shit, and then we're going to do that. Actually, I'll tell you about it first, and then I'll get the thing. So, in the middle of Hamlet, and I'm back to the thing I talked about last time too. In the middle of Hamlet, there is a section where the actors come to visit, and Hamlet's so excited to see the actors. And one of the funny things that happens when the actors show up is that they do a play. He wants them to do a play that sort of he's written. But before they do that, he says, "Oh, I love your play so much. I love this one play with this one part." And then he has the guy, the lead actor, kind of recite a whole big speech, and it's from an ancient poem, which is called the Aeneid. And the Aeneid is, if you know, Homer wrote the Odyssey and the Iliad, and then like a couple hundred years later, this guy Virgil wrote the Aeneid, which is like a sequel to the Iliad and the Odyssey, that follows one character from that on his journey to found a new empire in Italy. Not super important that you know that, but it's another one of these like war poems about war and doing the right thing and whatever. So what really interesting thing happens to Hamlet in that scene that I think Sydney would really approve of, which is that Hamlet listens to the actor deliver this. He says, "Oh, give me this speech. Tell me this big speech," and he has the actor do a big speech. Well, fascinatingly, the speech he wants to hear is about someone sort of killing their uncle with a sword because the uncle has been a terrible king. Well, that's what Hamlet's supposed to be doing. Hamlet's supposed to be killing Claudius, his uncle, because Claudius is a terrible king and murdered his dad. So Hamlet is really interested in being inspired by fiction. But he has a whole big speech about the actors and what the actors do. But what he's looking for, I think what Hamlet is searching for when the actors first show up, he's searching for role models. His mind, he's supposed to kill his uncle, the king. And so his mind thinks of a famous story in which someone has to kill an uncle, a king. And he loves the speech. He wants to hear the speech because he is trying. It's not really successful, but he's trying to motivate himself to do something. Because Hamlet's problem is that he knows Claudius is the bad guy. This is exactly what Sydney said. People know right from wrong. I mean, he knows he's supposed to get revenge. He just doesn't feel like it for all kinds of reasons. I mean, he doesn't like violence. He's a thinker. He's a lover. He's not an action hero. He doesn't really want to do it. And he's also depressed. And when you're depressed, you feel like nothing matters and what's the point of anything. So, Claudius is like, his father's like, your uncle's a very terrible guy. You should kill him. And he's sort of like, oh, the whole world's terrible. What's the point? So I'm gonna take a look at that scene in a second and kind of we'll look briefly at it. But I think it's an interesting scene that's sort of worth studying. Okay, cool. Take a look at it in the next video.